Our next speaker is Daniel Kašaj. He's coming from a company called UX First. It's a user experience design agency, and he's going to talk about user experience design and prototyping. Here you go.
Hello everyone, and thanks for being here. I'm very humbled by this turnout. I didn't expect it to be like this. This is going to be a UX talk on a software developers conference, so I'm a priori thinking about being the oddball out. But today you've already witnessed the keynote speaker talking about soft skills and the importance of talking to people. And in this previous presentation here, you've also heard the words experiments repeating itself over and over. So I think this is the part of the story that is just going to continue over, and we're going to stick to this subject. Who am I to talk about this? I'm a local guy here from Zagreb. I'm 40 years old. I've spent about 20 years in IT, but the last, let's say 15 maybe, I was tied to web developer world. My personal interests are in mobile apps and of course in design and communication. And I'm going to tell you that user experience design, the theme of today's presentation, is just not about knowing all the right answers. It's about finding them and knowing how to find them. This is a quote that I've just recently found online on a Medium article by Zoltan Kolin from IBM. And it's actually the perfect quote to start off this presentation. The experiments. This is something that you have in your tool belt when you want to perform great stuff. The word experiment that you've heard so many times today has this wonderful meaning. It's an experiment is allowed to fail. When you call something an experiment, you get to learn from it whether it wins or fails. But this means that experiments are really, really good things. In UX design, I don't think you guys deal with UX design, but in a way, all of you who make software, you impact the user experience. So today I'm going to try to inspire you about experimenting with a few different things. Maybe talking to your end users, because once you talk to a number of them, they can really point out the things in your software they are frustrated with that seem to be maybe even little fixes in your software, but you're not aware of them until you talk to them. Prototyping is the word that is the theme today also. And prototyping means maybe just putting an idea together to see if it works. It's something that you should be able to divorce from, like this is a prototype and I know I'm going to throw it in the trash at some point, but it is going to help me learn in my software development process. So when you prototype on your own, you will be in a mindset that will, even as you draw your own prototype, your sketches of your software, how it works, even as you draw it, your mind will tell you things like gotchas and things that you can improve on the fly. And it's even better if you prototype in team, if you just get maybe one or two or maybe more persons together. And when you give the chance for more eyes and more brains to look at the same thing, your prototypes might get better before you even start the development work. And one also important kind of experiment would be testing with users, because once you've talked to your users, once you've sketched out your interface to your software, and you've confirmed it with your team as a thing that your team can stand behind on, it's also a great thing to test this with the end users. You have some of your customers, you can just call them up, bring them up. It doesn't have to be an official testing, it doesn't have to be a dedicated event. Testing with users might even be a small 10-minute coffee with the first 3 minutes chit-chatting, and then 7 minutes just looking at the sketches. And you will immediately see from a person who is going to be using your software, who comes from a different culture, who has a different mindset, who has different things bugging them in their work days, they will immediately tell you how you can improve your prototypes. If you're in the B2C enterprise, if your software goes directly to end customers, of course you're going to talk to your end customers. But if you're in the B2B business, which I believe most of you might be, it's also a great idea to work with your clients and talk to them, to their end customers. In the slides, I said talk to customers and then strike it through, because what it matters actually is to listen to the customers. Your goal here is not to persuade the customer in the prototyping phase that they are wrong and that they should be seeing the things how you are seeing. Your job is actually just to listen, to give them a small nudge and see their interpretation of the software you're going to prototype. So prototypes actually do help you and your team. What they help you is avoid cats. I want to address this immediately. A cat, when I say a cat, this gentleman here thinks of the orange cat Garfield drawn in a cartoonish manner. And this other gentleman here thinks about the Garfield in 3D in the Hollywood. Yeah, you do. Okay. I didn't say you liked it, I just said you think about it. And then this other gentleman might think about a Persian cat and a Persian rug. And yeah, I might have been thinking about my friend's cat whose name is Slavko, and he likes to jump off balconies from the first floor. But when we talk about a term, about a subject, each of us obviously comes from a different, even in the same city, we come from different cultures. And instead of just waving our hands in the air and thinking this could work like this, it's better to just prototype, have something solid in front of your eyes and talk to your team members about it, because then you avoid these all different types of cat. You all look at the same cat and immediately know if it's something that is a shared vision, or you guys need to talk a bit more to come to a conclusion where you want to take your prototype. Prototypes also help you explore alternatives. Actually, let's step back a bit and say what prototype actually does. It puts your mind to working on a project before you actually start working on a project. So maybe if you have deadlines, if you have goals, short-term, long-term, you might want to go into a prototype and get done with it as soon as possible. But the purpose of the prototype isn't just to make a prototype. The purpose of the prototype is just to see ahead of time what could work better for your product. So I encourage you to explore alternatives as much as you can. Sometimes you, as a singular UX designer or just a sketcher of your software, can think of two alternatives, but I guarantee you, you bring one other pair of eyes to this prototype and you get a third alternative. So alternatives, just keep them to a simple module, a simple screen in your software, maybe a simple functionality of your software. Sometimes just trying to think in a different way will produce alternatives that you can actually test with users. You just need to get in tune with your users, call them up, ask them to participate in a small just user test, show them your alternatives, see which ones they figure out better. This means listen to them. Just give them and see, maybe they can improve your prototypes on the spot. They have improved mine numerous times. So getting in tune with your users before you actually start developing, it's actually a great idea. It saves you time tenfold. Imagine if you developed a piece of software for 6 months, as the keynote speaker said, the release cycle of 6 months is even not that atrocious to think of. And imagine if after 6 months you realize that your users don't want to use it, or a really small percentage of them uses it. A much bigger percentage could be using it and liking it if you just talk to them ahead of time and adjusted it to their expectations. So I'm going to give you some prototyping tips. You decide for yourself about the fidelity of the prototypes. What does this mean? You can make sketches from just gray boxes without any letters or words written anywhere. But you can also make them really high fidelity. You can make them to look so detailed that when you show it to someone, someone says, I don't like this design. Of course you don't like this design because it's not the final design of the design product. It's just a sketch or mock-up or of functionalities and how they are going to work. And when you make your own high fidelity prototypes, use your colors how you want. I suggest that you use colors to communicate functionality. For instance, if you decided that your software has a user profile screen which has the parts about, I don't know, basic data, billing data, and recent projects, just use colors to separate the meanings of those. And when you use, for instance, blue color for the listing of projects, use that also on the project listings or other screens that relate to this context. Microcopy is really important. Each and every one of you can make the effort of writing better microcopy. What's microcopy? Well, those little labels that clear the picture for the users. The label on a button, it can say continue, but it can also say continue to a 3-minute survey. And the user knows, well, I don't have time for a 3-minute survey. I'm not going to click on this button. But it's clear to them, what does the button do? So in the early stages, just think of trying to use those labels to make it clear for everyone. So when you test with users, you don't have to explain anything to them. You just give them the prototypes and see if they can manage to understand what they're supposed to do. It's also a good thing, I've learned this from Dr. House, it's also a good thing not to pay attention only to what they say to you as a feedback, but you have to look at their posture and how they react. For instance, if you wanted them to figure out which button to click and it took them 30 seconds of looking, something's wrong. Yeah? You can rearrange your prototype so that they can find what they're supposed to do on that screen faster. When you're prototyping, think of the states, empty states, edge cases, whatever you can think of. Try to include it in your prototypes as well. Because sometimes you build a new software, and when you build a new software and have a new user sign up, you don't want them to see an empty page. You need to think about what you can put on that empty page to guide them to fill it up. So this also includes the efforts into prototyping. Iterations are really, really good. Making a sketch, letting it sleep overnight and looking at it tomorrow might bring you new insights. Iterations it's also really important to divorce your prototypes. Like any good photographer, when they take a picture and you tell them it's not a very good picture, if they take personal offense, they're not divorced from their work. You really need to be able to say, yeah, you just brought a bit of new value into the prototype. The old one is going into trash, the new one is going to get updated, and just do it and do it. On my current project, I have a listing of items. A person could say, how the heck do you have 15 iterations on this? But we do have. So iterations are good. If someone comes and says, this is not good, the best thing you can do is ask them, how would you make it better? But not in a very, how would I say this, boasting kind of way. But you just actually ask them, how can this be better? Oh, I forgot to add a close link because people don't know how to exit this screen without doing any modifications. Thanks for this. This is a new iteration with this new thing. I might have skipped to the next slide unintentionally, but we are now at the next slide. So, but Daniel, I don't have time for that. We are on schedule. We're already working on projects. How do you expect us to go into prototyping when we are halfway into development? Well, just experiment with this. Talk to your client, talk to your manager. Tell them you might want to explore some alternatives with your software. Tell them you might need some time to do it. These prototypes actually don't take a lot of time. You can do them in presentation software. If you're good with PowerPoint, do it in PowerPoint. Keynote is the Apple's version of PowerPoint. I don't suppose you guys know, but the latest version of Keynote was prototyped in the previous version of Keynote. That's what they did. I use Sketch because I'm on a Mac, and Sketch is even considered old tool now. There are things like Figma, like InVision. InVision is coming up with new prototyping and sketching utility very soon. Everybody is competing about giving you, the end guys, the most freedom to do as quick as possible sketches, as many as iterations possible, and just get to the bottom of the sketch of your software you're going to presume. So I would encourage you to experiment, to talk to your managers, to talk to your clients, to say, let's try this approach. Can you call up 10 of the end users, because not all 10 are going to respond. If you get 3 or 4, if you get 5, you're golden, because user testing with 5 users will probably reveal 80% of the problems in your prototypes. And it doesn't take that many resources to do. See what you can do in a week. If your design doesn't speak to business priorities, you're going to be doing a lot of dead-end design work. That's a great quote that I've recently seen by Daniel Burka from GV, Google Ventures. This guy is a design partner there. Google Ventures works on a principle of investing in startups. And when they invest in startup, they also get everyone together in one room and try to set the startup on the perfect track for the future. And what they do, they have a 5-day process called the design sprint, which can be learned a lot about on the Google pages, and there's a dedicated book for this. But their process is essentially, bless you, their process is essentially getting people in the room on the first day, talking about what in their software or their work or any of their workflow is worth prototyping. They will, on day 3, they will decide what part to prototype. Day 4, they will prototype, and day 5, they will test it with 5 users. It seems that they have crafted this methodology over investing in more than 200 startups, and they experimented with 3-day design sprints, with 7-day design sprints. It turns out 5-day design sprints work best. So now that you know about this, I hope you have more interest and try to incorporate it in your vision of the future. That's pretty much it from me for today. I'll be happy to take any questions, but I also, out of respect for this conference, I would like to offer you my assistance or my free advice if you have any issues regarding this and you want to try with this. Just reach out to me over any of these networks. I know you're all smart people, you'll find me. And the only thing I ask from you for this free advice is you tell me what you liked about this presentation and what you didn't like about this presentation. That's it. So, questions? Free of questions? You're all free to go. Oh, one question.
How our creation companies respond to the needs that you need to design the user experience before you start developing? Do you have an appropriate budget for that, or it's a part of...
Well, it's work. It's work, so you definitely need a budget, but it's not a huge budget. From my experience, you can prototype pretty much everything in 2 weeks. If you want to have actual let's say, formal user testing, and you need to report to, if it's a big company that you work for and need to report to all sorts of management levels, yes, it takes a bit more time. But comparing to release cycle of 6 months or 1 year, what is this? Because working maybe 2 weeks, 1 week, or maybe 1 month on this will save you time tenfold. Thanks for the question. Thanks.